योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. In the previous session, we looked at Sutra 3.14. Today, we begin with 3.15. So 3.14 was Shantoditavyapadesha dharmanupati dharmi. So we looked at how Patanjali brings in the concept of dharmi, which had already come in the Bhashya as part of the sutra previously done. And then there were several points about that established the existence of the dharmi and also helped us understand the different pariṇāmas. Now the same overall topic still continues on the dharma, lakshana, avastha, parinama, etc. And in that continuation, we come to Sutra 3.15, which says, kramānyatvaṃ pariṇāmānyatve hetuḥ. What it means is that kramānyatvaṃ, kramasya anyatvaṃ. So different sequences, different ordering, that is kramānyatvaṃ. What is that? That is the cause behind pariṇāmānyatvaṃ. So kramānyatvaṃ pariṇāmānyatve hetuḥ. So how come different pariṇāmas arise from a given dharmi? That is because of the kramānyatvaṃ. There is a difference in sequencing, difference in ordering, says Patanjali in this sutra. Vyasa elaborates and helps us understand what is being said. So Vyasa says, ekasya dharmiणः एक एव परिणामः इति प्रसक्ते kramānyatvaṃ pariṇāmānyatve heturбhavati iti. So essentially, for a given dharmi is the entity that is undergoing transformation, the underlying entity which we call the substrate, etc. So for a given dharmi, for one dharmi, there is one parinama at a given time. Given this situation, it is the kramānyatvaṃ, the difference in the sequence, difference in the ordering, which is the cause behind the different transformations that we see. So kramānyatvaṃ, differences in sequence, pariṇāmānyatve heturbhavati iti. So it is the cause behind different parinamas, different transformations that are seen. He gives an example for us to understand. He says, tadyatha churnam mrit, pindam mrit, ghatam mrit, kanam mrit, iti cha kramaha. So he takes the example of soil or clay, out of which the ghata, the pots are made. So initially it is a powder. Churnam mrit. Mrit means the substance, the underlying substance, which here is the dharmi. It is the soil or clay or the material out of which pots are made. Initially it is in powdered form, so it is churnam mrit. Then it is made into a lump, so that is known as pindam mrit. So in preparation for the pot making, a lump is created, that is pindam mrit. Then that same substance again changes to become a ghatam mrit because a pot is created, so now it is a ghata, it is a pot. Then that pot is destroyed and it becomes into pieces, so that is kanam mrit. So considering the mrit, the soil or the clay as the dharmi, there is a sequence of transformations, which is the kramānyatvaṃ that is being mentioned here, and that sequence is churnamrit, so the powder, to the lump, to the pot, to the pieces. So essentially, the yoga shastra, yoga darshana, recognizes that there is a certain sequence here. And Kanamrit cha kramaha. This is the krama. In the modern science also there is a notion of sequence in the sense of the second law of thermodynamics, etc. Here, this is of course not rigorously mathematically being considered, but an observation seen in the world is recognized and a certain krama is identified. And that krama is used to explain how the several different pariṇāmas happen, but they seem to happen in certain sequences. Now, Vyasa says, Yo yasya dharmasya samanantaro dharmaha sa tasya kramaha. So what is this krama? What is this sequencing? What is this ordering? So the simple definition, Yo yasya dharmasya samanantaro dharmaha. So whichever dharma comes after a certain dharma, that is the krama. So what comes after what? Which dharma comes after which dharma? So in this example, the pinda dharma came after the churna dharma, the lump after the powder. The ghata dharma came after the pinda dharma, the pot after the lump. The kana dharma after the ghata dharma, so the pieces after the pot. All of these are different dharmas of the underlying mrid, which is the dharmi. So, yo yasya dharmasya samanantaro dharma. Whatever dharma comes after the previous dharma, immediately after, that is its krama, that is the sequence under question. Pindaha pratyavate ghata upajayate iti dharma pariṇāma kramaha. So, to describe this in terms of dharma pariṇāma, the krama becomes that the pindaha, the lump, pratyavate. So, the pinda is sort of the pinda is made into a certain shape. The pinda goes away and the ghata upajayate. The ghata is born. So the pinda goes away, the ghata, the pot is created, the lump goes away, the pot is created. That is the dharma pariṇāma kramaha. That is the ordering, that is the sequence from the dharma pariṇāma perspective. Now, lakshana pariṇāma kramaha ghatasya anagata bhavat vartamana bhava kramaha. So, looking at this from the lakshana pariṇāma point of view, if you're having the dharmas into focus, specifically, if you have the ghata dharma under focus, the dharma of the potness, that in the focus, then what is the lakshana pariṇāma krama for that? So that ghata dharma was in the anagata lakshana state, anagata lakshana condition. It had not yet come. So from that anagata lakshana bhava means existence. It had the existence of having the linga or having the lakshana of being anagata. From that state of existence, it obtained the vartamana bhava. It became active. It became a thing of a present. So from a lakshana pariṇāma point of view, we will describe it as the ghata dharma, which had the anagata lakshana. Now that same ghata dharma has the vartamana lakshana. So that is the lakshana pariṇāma kramaha. Tatha pindasya vartamana bhavat atita bhava kramaha. So just like the lakshana difference or the lakshana pariṇāma for the ghata dharma was described. If you have the pinda dharma, the lumpness as the dharma under focus, what happened to it? It had the vartamana lakshana, so vartamana bhavaha, tasmat, so vartamana bhavat, atita bhava kramaha. It obtained the lakshana of being atita. Atita means that had been. So it has become now a thing of the past. So from a lakshana pariṇāma point of view, where you have each of the dharmas under focus, you see what is the change in the lakshanas for each of the dharmas. So that is how this is explained with a simple example of the coming about of a pot from what was earlier just a loose powdered soil. Now continuing, he says natitasya asti kramaha. So atitasya, there is no krama, he says, na atitasya asti kramaha. Kasmat, how come? Purva paratayam satyam samanantaratvam. So, once something has become a thing of the past, there is no further krama for that dharma. Now why? How come? Says because Purva paratayam satyam samanantaratvam. So this samanantaratvam means having something subsequent to it. That is only there if there is a purva parata. So something purva parata means that that nature of having something before and something later, that is known as purva parata. Only when that is there, that characteristic is there, then there is a samanantaratvam, something immediately occurring next. But for atita, it says satu nasti atitasya. So that purva parata does not exist for atita. And tasmat, therefore, dvayoreva lakshanayoho kramaha. And therefore, this is only two of the lakshanas, namely the anagata lakshana and the vartamana lakshana. Anagata means that has not yet happened, yet to come. That lakshana has a krama because there is a possibility of that being vartamana at some point. So there is a certain krama. Vartamana also has a krama because vartamana will later become atita. However, atita has no krama. Therefore, he says, dvayoreva, only of the two means of anagata and the vartamana, only for these two lakshanas, dvayoreva lakshanayoho kramaha.
So, the prakriti parinamas are described, and that is why we get from prakriti cosmos. There is that orderliness. There are no bizarre effects coming out of prakriti. So that is why the universe is cosmos and not chaos. So that aspect of metaphysics is being postulated by the Sutra, that from Prakriti we could get the diversified creation. From the source matter, the original dharmi, sattva, raja, tama gunas, only three gunas, from there we are getting this diversified universe. Ultimately getting the matters in the form of solid matters of variegated forms, liquid matters of variegated forms, gaseous matters of variegated forms. So there is the diversity, immeasurable diversity. So the metaphysics is mentioning certain laws whereby we are able to get something today as science of physics. So we know certainties, what is going to come out of what is going to happen to what. So therefore we have that science of physics today. It is because of the metaphysical precepts here, like dharmi, dharma parinām getting lakshana parinām, and then from lakshana parināmas there are avastha parināmas, dharmi, dharma bhava, avastha parināmatrayas. Now he says, kramānyatvaṃ pariṇāmānyatve hetuḥ. As the universe is enormously diversified, how does it happen? From source matter, the dharmi. So from dharmi you can get several parināmas, and one of the popular examples that we get in the shastras, like the milk can have a dharma parinām in one channel, and then it will become cream, etc. In another channel, the milk fermented will proceed towards becoming curds, yogurt, that is, and then butter and buttermilk and clarified butter, etc. So there are channels of parināmas. That's why we get diversified matters coming out of one substrate matter. Now, milk is one substrate matter, but in one parināma you can get so many milk products. One in the channel of cream and the other in the channel of butter and clarified butter or the curds. And we get so many products out of that. So the diverse form of universe is available with the parināma that has been described so far, dharma parināma, lakshana parināma, avastha parināma. So, ultimately we will see that the sattva, raja, tama gunas are substrate dharmis. They are not dharma. They are dharmi. They are substrate of all matter, of whatever kind. Like stars to frozen water in the form of ice, etc. So frozen material to boiling material, vaporized material. The diversified universe is available because of some kind of metaphysical laws, like we have laws of physics, and you just now heard about the Newton's law. So similarly, the law in metaphysical aspects are also there. So when the krama changes, the parināma changes. When the sequential order changes, you get different parināmas. And then you heard just about the example that Vyasa had quoted, Turnamrut, Pindamrut, Ghatamrut, Kapala Mrut, etc. So the source dharmi is constant. But then there is a orderliness in the parināmas which take place. To make it further more simpler and simpler, see, when a child is born, child goes through biological states. There is no coming back and going forth. The baby becomes child, child becomes teenager, teenager just doesn't become again infant. So there are no back and forth movement, but there is a parināma krama, the sequential order. And that's why so many things can be predicted. And that's why we have science of physics, which can predict certain things and which will tell you what will become what. So point is, this is cosmos and there is that orderliness, and this is universe despite having diversities. Another example, sometimes it is given that the proportions also changing means you get different effects. And one of the popular examples is given like ingredients of tea, the hot beverage. The ingredients are the same: water, milk, tea leaves, sugar. So we know that the tea is prepared with particular process, and then only you get the tea. But then if you change the ingredients, again you get different outputs from the same ingredients. There is certain proportion for a cup of tea, preparation of cup of tea. In certain proportion you get water, milk, sugar and tea leaves. But if you change the proportions, same ingredients will give you variegated kind of beverages, substances, from very, very, very bitter to very, very, very sweet. A lot of milk, a lot of sugar will almost give you something like Basmati. Very little sugar and lot of tea leaves and nominal milk will give you a very, very bitter substance, kashaya, very bitter substance. So the proportion of basic materials like sattva, raja, tama gunas, they come in different proportions, the different turnouts are there. Then also changing the sequential process, you get different effects. What is after what? What is before what? So that also is a process which we need to we get out of which a certain effect, a certain output, a certain product. If you shuffle the process, then you will get another output. The point is, kramānyatvaṃ, pariṇāmānyatvaṃ will be possible. So that is what is being discussed here on little metaphysical plane. We are trying to comprehend it with something on a very physical plane, such as I said, tea ingredients, etc. So there is that orderliness which you just have heard in the example, Churnamrit, Pindamrit, Ghatamrit, Kapalamrit, and again Kanamrit. So the earth matter transforms in particular order to give you a particular outcome. And therefore there is dharma parinama krama. In the example that cited earlier, that milk can go into becoming something or the form of cream, and in another parinama krama it can become something like curds. So dharma parinama krama is there. It happens in that particular order. Milk becoming yogurt, yogurt becoming butter, butter becoming clarified butter. It doesn't go back and forth. So there is orderliness. That's why we get the science of physics and science of chemistry, etc. Physical sciences come out because of the orderliness in the nature. So there is also the Lakshana Parinama Krama, which you just now heard, and a specific mention that after the Atita state, after the latency, we don't get the Krama. It is Lakshana Parinama of the Anagata Lakshana, Vartamana Lakshana, and not Atita Lakshana. So that detail was also mentioned and it was described just now. So the point is, we know what is going to happen to something. It is because of this Parinama Krama aspect. The things on the time belt, they don't go back and forth. And therefore, we know what is going to happen to what. So that is what is being discussed. Basically, from Prakriti, we get cosmos and we get universe and not diverse. We will have diversified creation, but yet it is universe. So therefore, we refer to this as universe. We don't refer to it as diverse or multiverse. Universe. There is something, a factor which is binding, and that's why this is cosmos and not chaos. So the point is, by parinama krama modification, you can get different outcomes and certain outcomes. They are again certain. They are not uncertain. They are certain outcomes. And that's how the basic material has that orderliness, and it is not disorderly, and therefore we are not in chaos, but we are in cosmos. So Vyasa explained as dharma parinama krama. There is a parinama krama. What after what before what. And therefore we have these physical sciences. Lakshana parinama, what after what and what before what. So therefore we are able to have the science that we are having today, which is on physical plane, but then on the metaphysical plane also there is that orderliness. So this is what is being described, and basically you can get enormously diversified universe out of the three gunas only. We don't need anything more than three gunas, sattva, raja, tama, three gunas. As the basic dharmi, we have this entire creation of the form of having stars and nebulae and planets and whatever creation on the various planets, etc., etc. And basically it is one and the same matter. Like even in modern physics, when you go to particle physics, you have only three particles there, subatomic particles. And from that, we are getting this immeasurably variegated form of universe with so many kinds of matters in it. So the basic orderliness is in very metaphysics, is what this sutra is telling us. Okay.
So let us continue. Now Vyasa continues on Avastha Parinama. He says, Tatha avastha parināma kramopi. The avastha parināma also has a krama which is similar. Now continuing the same example. Ghatasya avinavasya prante puranata drishyate. So now, if you look at a newly created pot, which is known as abhinava ghataha, a newly created pot. In parts of it, prante, in certain parts, puranata drishyate. You see a tinge of it becoming older and older. So the oldness slowly starts coming in the place of the newness. Now this puranata, sacha, kshana paramparanupatina, kramena, abhivedyamana, param vyaktim, apadyate. So how does this operate? So this puranata, the aspect of becoming older and older, it follows the kshana parampara. It follows the moment by moment. It comes about. It manifests the oldness. So kshana parampara anupatina kramena. So in that order, that kind of an order or sequencing, abhivedyamana, manifesting. So the oldness is manifesting with time. Param vyaktim apadyate. At some point it reaches its highest point, means it becomes completely old. So from something that was totally new, the puranata, the avastha of puranata, avastha of being old, moment by moment it manifests itself and at some point it reaches its peak. Now this is a different parinama. This is another, other than the dharma and the lakshana parinama. This is the avastha parinama. So Vyasa says, dharma lakshanabhyam cha vishishtaha ayam tritiyaha parinamaha. So this parinama is different from, is distinct from. So that is, it says dharma lakshanabhyam cha vishishtaha. So from these two, this is a distinct kind of a parinama. It is a third parinama, the avastha parinama. So now we have looked at the three parinamas. And I mean, we have been looking at it in different ways. So here it was sort of explained in some sense in simpler terms with an example at hand related to the pot, etc. So, and specifically to bring about the aspect of the krama, the ordering of the sequence. So, te ete kramaha dharma dharmi bhede sati pratilabdha swarupaha. So, these kramas, te ete kramaha. So, these kramas that are being discussed, this ordering, this sequence, they obtain or they have their form, they have their description from the point of view of the seeing the dharma and the dharmi as different. So if we analyze the dharmi and the dharma as different and consider the analytical angle of dharma lakshana avastha parinama, then these kramas that were just discussed with respect to dharma parinama krama, lakshana parinama krama and avastha parinama krama, they obtain their form or they can be described in that manner. So Vyasa is clarifying here that the same thing can be looked at in different ways. This way of analysis, where the dharmi and the dharma are taken as separately and analyzed separately, then we describe it as dharma lakshana avastha parinama, and each has their own kramas or their own sequencing, ordering rules as was just described. Now he says, dharmopi dharmi bhavati anya dharma swarupapekshaya iti. Now this is a bit of a key point that is being made, and in some sense it also broadens the whole description. It says dharma api dharmi api dharmo bhavati or dharmo api dharmi bhavati. So dharma with respect to one dharmi can itself be considered as a dharmi with respect to another dharma. So now it becomes sort of a layered understanding. It is not necessary, which we have seen earlier also, where the sattva raja tama gunas were sort of said to be the ultimate dharmis. But here, when we were describing the pot and so on, we didn't consider sattva raja tama gunas, the fundamental infrastructural matter or Prakriti as the dharmi. We consider the soil, the clay, as the dharmi. But with respect to the sattva, rajatama, mahat, etc., the soil itself is a dharma, because that is one form that the mahat has assumed or taken. So therefore, you can, as part of an analysis, you can say that dharmo api dharmi bhavati anya dharma sarupa apekshaya iti. So with respect to another dharma, depending on how we are analyzing it, a thing that is a dharma and a characteristic in the current analysis could become the dharmi or the underlying entity with respect to another parinama and another analysis that we are doing. Which, just like I said, one might say that the soil is a dharma or a particular state in the context of mahat or in the context of bhutadi, etc., the fundamental tattvas. However, when we are analyzing the soil turning into a pot, etc., we consider the soil itself as the dharmi. So therefore, depending on how we are looking at it, these terms can be applied. It is sort of a broad way of analysis, and the Vyasa is making that very clear that Yoga Shastra definitely recognizes that one might consider something as a dharmi as part of one analysis, but as a dharma as part of another analysis. So this is a key statement being made here, that dharmo api dharmi bhavati anya dharma swarupa apekshaya. Yada tu paramartatah dharmini abhedopacharaha tadvarena sa eva abhidiyate dharmastadayam ekatvenaiva kramaha pratyavabhasate. So this goes back to the first statement where he said te kramaha dharma dharmi bhede sati pratilabdha swarupaha. So the dharma lakshana avastha parinamas and their krama came about when we described it as dharma and dharmi as being distinct and analyzed it in that way. However, if paramarthataha dharmini abhedopacharaha, so if we decide to consider just the dharmi as a complete thing, and we decide not to make that distinction between dharma and dharmi, then when we think about it from that point of view, then we look at the entire transformation, entire parinama and its krama as ekatvenaiva kramaha pratyavabhasate. So all of this can become a single transformation. So for example, the clay turning into a pot, turning into pieces can be considered as a single transformation if we decide not to analyze it as dharma, dharmi, etc. separately, and therefore we don't bring in the lakshana, avastha, all these things as separate transformations happening, but we consider a single substance itself going through all these transformations. So once again, there is a broad perspective of analysis where different ways are being recognized and accepted in the Siddhanta. Now Vyasa comes back to the Chitta. So if you remember, this whole discussion had begun where in a previous sutra where we started with the Chitta undergoing the Nirodha up to the point of the Asampragnata Samadhi. And the initial question that was addressed was, if Chitta is made up of the Sattva, Rajatama gunas which are forever changing, how can they attain Nirodha? So then we started looking at that, and it started with the Nirodha Parinama, which was then defined, and then the Samadhi Parinama, etc. So from the Chitta, this was then expanded to say that it applies to all the Bhutendriyas, which means everything, the entire creation, this aspect of Dharma Lakshana Avastha Parinama. And then we discussed several things behind that. What is the nature of the Parinama? What is the Dharma? What is the Dharmi? We addressed several objections to the Siddhanta, etc. But from a Yoga Shastra point of view, the main entity under our lens, so to speak, is the Chitta. And therefore, Vyasa brings us back to the Chitta. He says, Chittasya dvaye dharmaha paridrashtaha cha aparidrishtaha cha. So he says, now the chitta has the following dharmas. Now he is going to describe the dharmas of the chitta, and then he divides them into paridrishta, means those that are seen, easily seen, and the ones that are not easily seen, the aparidrishta. Now in these two types, the paridrishta, what is the paridrishta? What are the ones that are easily seen and recognized? Tatra pratyayatmakaha paridrishtaha. We have seen what is pratyaya. Pratyaya means jnanam. Pratyaya means the cognitive imprint on the chitta. The fact that the chitta is visualizing a certain thing, or is thinking about a certain thing, or is analyzing a certain thing. All of these are different, or is remembering a certain thing. We have also seen this in the context of chitta vritti. So these are the pratyayas, the cognitive imprint on the chitta. Those are the paridrishta dharmas. Those are the dharmas that are seen, recognized, or something we can identify, see, sense, etc. So the paridrishta dharmas are pratyayatmakaha, of the nature of being the cognitive imprint. So now let us look at the aparidrishta, again, which are the dharmas of the chitta. Once again, like I said, chitta is the most important dharmi as far as the Yoga Shastra is concerned, and that is why we are looking at this. So what are these aparidrishta dharmas of our main dharmi, the chitta? It says vastu matratmaka aparidrishtaha. So the aparidrishtaha are sort of the very nature of the vastu of the chitta, vastu matratmakaha. So they are the fundamental aspect of the nature of the chitta, what it is built of. In some sense, in the modern day analogy, you could say that the paridrishta, the pratyayatmaka, is more like the software of the chitta with the different imprints on it. Whereas the vastumatratmaka are the hardware of the chitta, what it is actually built of, and the dharmas arising from there. They are the vastumatratmakaha aparidrishtaha, dharmas of our main dharmi, which is the chitta. Techa saptaiva bhavanti anumanena prapita vastu matra sadbhavaha. So there are exactly 7, he says, Vyasa says, 7 dharmas from the point of view of the prapita vastu matra sadbhava, means prapitaha, bodhitaha, jnapitaha, vastu matrataya, chittanamaka vastu akarataya sadbhavaha astitvam, yesham te. So the ones that are arising out of the very material, of the very nature of the chitta, and that those that have come from inference, it is anumanena. So those are the 7 dharmas of the chitta. First is the nirodha. Now nirodha, so this is the bhashya, and there are further other texts will explain the bhashya, there are vivaranas, etc. So those will say that nirodha uktaha. The nirodha has already been described. So if you go back to the sutra on the nirodha parināma, in high detail it was described how the chitta is able to attain the nirodha, that is the characteristic of the asampragnata state, which is the virama pratyaya, etc. So that was, I think, sutra 3.9. So the nirodha parināma, or the nirodha dharma of the chitta, has already been seen and already been described. So that is the first is nirodha. So let me read out it's a couplet of 2 lines. So it says nirodha dharma samskaraha parināmotha jivanam cheshta shaktischa chittasya dharma darshana varjitaha. So which are the dharmas that are darshana varjitaha, which Vyasa has called aparidrishtaha, not easily seen, not directly seen. So first is nirodha, which has been described in 3.9. Then dharma. So here dharma refers to dharma dharmau. Dharma dharmau meaning the usual punya papa, etc. So what this also tells us is that because it is vastu matra, means every time we do any action which is either meritorious or not meritorious, either it is dharmanusarena or adharma, that creates a change in the material of the chitta itself. And therefore, the punya papa, the dharma dharmo, is another characteristic of a given chitta. So first was nirodha, second was dharma, third is samskaraha. So samskaraha, the vasana rupaha. So samskaras are essentially the imprints of various actions from time immemorial. Because as we have seen also in the first chapter, a given chitta and a given purusha have an anadi sambandha. They are together from time immemorial through various cycles of creation, through various different births and deaths and cycles of life. So throughout all this, there are various imprints being generated due to the various chitta vrittis, the various actions, their imprints, various memories, their imprints, etc. So all these bring about a certain tendency in the chitta, which is part of the very material of the chitta. So just as the dharma action became part of the material of the chitta, the other ones are the samskaras, which are vasana rupaha. So that is the third. So nirodha dharma samskaraha pariṇāmo atha jivanam. So what is pariṇāmah? So pariṇāmah is ukta lakshanaha, the various changes that happen in the chitta, which has already also been discussed. So the three pariṇāmas that we had seen, the nirodha, samadhi, and the ekagra pariṇāma, etc., those are the pariṇāma aspect, ekagrata pariṇāma. So that is the fourth characteristic. So nirodha dharma samskaraha pariṇāma atha jivanam. So what is jivanam? Dharmadi apekshaya sakala karana vrittihi prana lakshana yena chitta dharmena bhavati sajivanam mityuchyate. So what is jivanam? The whole life process. But see how nicely it is described. The life process, which is dharmadi apekshaya, according to one's dharma, adharma, punya, papa configuration. Sakala karana vrittihi prana lakshana. All the karanas, which are the indriyas, the indriya shaktis, the indriya not meaning the physical manifestation of the eyeball, the ear, etc., but the inner power of seeing, hearing, etc., those that refers to the indriyas. So the karana vrittis, even the manas as an indriya. So all these are karana vrittis, sakala karana vrittis, their various states. Prana lakshana, which is essentially powered by the prana. And we have had a lot of discussion around prana in the sutras dealing with pranayama. So all of these, how does it happen? Yena chitta dharmena bhavati. So all of this happens because of a certain aspect, a certain characteristic of the chitta. It is the material of the chitta that brings about all of this. So that particular characteristic is called jivanam. So that is the fifth. Nirodha dharma samskara pariṇāma atha jivanam. Jivanam is the fifth. And this is the explanation of how the chitta has and that is why again in the pranayama we had seen the close relation between prana and the chitta. Manasaha spandanam pranaha, pranasya spandanam manaha, etc. So that here again it comes about. So this is a very instructive couple of lines about this characteristic of the chitta normally not visible to us, which is being described. The fifth is cheshta. Cheshta means vyaparaha. So the cheshta meaning the normal kriya. So whatever the chitta does through the indriyas or on its own, etc., all the activities, that is cheshta. So the ability to do that, the strength, the capacity to do that is also a part of the characteristic coming from the material of the chitta. So that is the sixth. The last is shaktihi. Shaktihi means samarthyam. So shaktihi means the ability, the capability to do things, to become the hetuḥ of various things that happen. So that underlying shakti, that is the seventh dharma. So these are the seven dharmas. Nirodha dharma samskaraha pariṇāmota jivanam cheshta shaktischaritasya dharma darshana varjitaha. So if one were to characterize a chitta, they would use from a paridrishta point of view, from the characteristics that are seen, that can be sensed, they are the pratyaya. What is the current thought? The chitta is seeing something, hearing something, that is the paridrishta. Aparidrishta is a whole material configuration of a given chitta. And that can be described using these 7 characteristics which has been described here. Nirodha, maybe one might say Nirodha as a dharma is not manifested. Then dharma dharmo, there is so much punya and papa. Then sanskaras, this is the vasana, this is the tendency. Then the parinama, it is okay, it is in the current vyuthana state and the parinama is not happening at this point, etc. Jivanam, cheshta, shakti. So these can be used as characteristics to describe the underlying material, the darshana varjita aspects of the chitta. So with this, Vyasa completes the particular description, and that began with the krama, and then that ended with describing the dharmas or the characteristics of the main dharmi as far as Yoga Shastra is concerned, which is the chitta. So that ends the Bhashya on 3.15.
So in this part, we saw that the third parinama, which is avastha parinama, that what's the distinction between the parinama krama of the dharma parinama, lakshana parinama, and the avastha parinama. So the things are going from newness to oldness, which ultimately results into avastha of the matter. Now, more interestingly, what he mentions here about dharma-dharmi classification. How far dharma-dharmi classification is absolute and how it is relative. This is also a matter that we should be considering as students of metaphysics of Patanjalas. So, dharmo api dharmi bhavati is a wonderful statement that he makes. Like we said, this is the cause and this is the effect. Now, we think the relationship of the nature of cause and effect is quite watertight. This is the cause and this is the effect. So therefore, we say this is the cause. But then the cause also is the effect of something else. And that's why in scientific process, we can go towards an effect and the cause of the effect. Then the cause of the cause. Cause of the cause of the cause. Cause of the cause of the cause of the cause. So, the cause also becomes effect. So, cause and effect are not absolute relationships. Now, effect, so for example, I get angry. And because I get angry, there is an effect of it. That people around me are parched. So, we say the cause was my anger, and then effect was that people around me were parched or vexed and troubled and tormented. But then my anger itself was the effect of something else. There was a cause for me to become angry. So maybe I lost my money, I lost my wallet, and that's why I got angry. So the anger itself is effect of something which preceded that I lost my money, I lost my wallet. So what was considered as a cause is also effect of something. And this we see in the phenomenal world, that what is taken as cause is effect of something preceding that. And there is a chain of cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. So dharma dharmi is also similarly to be considered, like Brut is said to be dharmi in all earthen manifestations of pot, etc., pots and vessels or whatever form of earthen matter. So the Brut becomes dharmi. But that the Brut is also dharma of earlier phase of earth coming into existence, the earthen matter coming into existence. The Mrut is effect of something. And in Sankhya philosophy, we get the 24 principles which come in a proper order: Mahat, Ahankara, tanmatra, mahabhutas, and therefore there is dharma-dharmi relativity is to be understood. And this is a very important mention that come across in Vyasa's commentary. Dharmo api dharmi bhavati anya dharma sarupa apekshayeti. So it also gives us little scientific dimension of it as to how we have to look at the things. The effect is out of a cause, but the cause also can be effect of something preceding that manifestation of the cause. Therefore, there is cause of the cause, cause of the cause of the cause, cause of the cause of the cause of the cause, cause of the cause of the cause of the cause of the cause. And in metaphysics, we get the terminal point, which you heard that trigunas. Trigunas are first dharmi and they are absolute dharmi. They do not have another cause before them, or pradhanam. That's why it is called pradhanam. The pradhana has no cause before that. It is cause of all effects thereafter. So that also important kind of view is given to us in understanding the science behind metaphysics. And then he came back to chitta, because as you heard now, we came to this dharma lakshana avastha parināma from chitta parināmas. After chitta parināmas were mentioned, ete eva dharma lakshana parināma avastha vyakhyataha for bhutendriyas. So we came from chitta parināmas to this bhuta indriya parināmas, and therefore he goes back to chitta parināma, and he says dvaye paridrushtacha aparidrushtacha, and you heard about the description of what is paridrushta, that is which is graspable, comprehensible, while aparidrushta is not graspable. And therein again we came to that wonderful chuplet, the sapta dharmas which he mentioned. And even in case of paridrushta dharmas, this was about chitta aparidrushta dharmas, nirodha dharma, samskara, parināma, jivanam, cheshta, shakti, etc. But even with regards to paridrushta parināmas, like which are graspable, we don't see so many things in it. We know that a new thing is going to become old, but its journey from newness to oldness is not sighted. We cannot sight it. But it is going to become old. But if it is going to become old, it is not going to become old at a point in time. It's a gradual process out of lakshana parināma and avastha parināma. That newness to oldness, navata to puranata, is a process, is a journey. But we don't see the journey. Here the parents see their child is growing. But the growth, moment to moment, is happening. That is not sighted. We cannot be sighting the moment to moment growth that is taking place in the child. And unless there is moment to moment change, the growth in the child cannot be growing. It doesn't grow on a point of day, like on a birthday. It doesn't become older by 1 year. The 6-year child doesn't become 7 year, or 7-year child doesn't become 8 year on birthday. But it's a constant process. And that is also not seen. We don't see. Even the parents won't see. The moment to moment child is growing, but moment to moment growth is a paridrushta. So even in paridrushta, there are so many things which we do not cite, particularly navata to puranata, newness to oldness. We know it is going to become old, and something has become old, something will become old, but the oldness appearing or appearance of it is not cited. But in samadhi prajna, we have seen that vastu dharma, it is with regards to vastumatra aspect of samadhi, that object is seen, and it's an all-dimensional view, not only multi-dimensional but omni-dimensional view, which happens in samadhi prajna. Now, these pariṇāmas is to be understood that the parināma krama is there. It cannot be violated. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be thwarted. But then it can be slowed down or it can be accelerated. And today we are aware of it. Like milk set to become curds. In winter, it takes a longer time. In summer, it happens quicker. So the process can be quickened by handling the temperatures. It can be made slower by handling the temperatures. If you have kept the milk for curds to set, then if you have kept in freezer chest, you will have to wait for weeks for that to become curds. So parināma krama can be slowed down or rapidified, but parināma krama cannot be violated or disturbed. So many things that we can be getting out of what is postulated in this sutra. And finally, the 7 aspects which are very interesting with regards to chitta. The dharma cannot be seen. Samskara cannot be seen. But samskara will manifest after a while. Dharma will manifest after a while that it will be, a person will commit a virtue. Samskar cannot be perceived, but the effects of samskars will be sighted after a while. The parināma similarly, I just now told you, we cannot see the becoming of curds, but the milk become curds. But we cannot be seeing the becoming of milk into curds, the parināma. So also jivanam. We know that from birth, we are heading towards death. But then we cannot be seeing the flow of jivanam. So also cheshta, shakti, the potentialities, etc. We know that potentialities are there in a person, but then they manifest, we realize them. We cannot be seeing what. That's why even the parents will not know what the child is going to become when the child is going to be a young person, 25, 30 years of age. Even the parents are not aware what is going to happen, because that is a potentiality which is going to become when the child of 3-4 years is going to become 25, 28 years of age. So that's the marvel again, that we understand the life from what is being mentioned in the Pariṇāma Sutras. If we can extend our vision, we will know certain things about life, so many certainties and so many uncertainties. So we get some prudence with regards to life, because so many things are aparidrushta. Even for parents, their children are aparidrushta. What is going to happen to child is really not predictable for even parents. So that's how we have an element of uncertainty in the life, because of aparidrushtata and because of the samskar, because of the potentialities, because of the shaktitvam. So a very interesting matter has been stuffed in this sutra. So with this, the Pariṇāma Traya Sutra comes to an end. Bhutendriya Parināmas. So there is a lot of matter which we need to decipher from what Vyasa has told us. It can be opened out further in the light of what our life is, in the light of what we have around us, to know those things, what are around us, and to know something about our own life. This sutra gives a lot of material for our wisdom scope to really understand the life in proper dimension and proper perspective. Okay.
Okay, we'll stop here for today. Next time will be the last one in this series of topics, which will be a short sutra. So keep this context in mind when you hear the next session. So let's recite the slokas on Guruji and stop for today. Vaijñānikam pravaktritva asaneshu kalavidam योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञं वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुम् योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यः प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्यगुरो तुभ्यं सुन्दराय नमो नमः. Thank you.
Namaskar, all of you.